The gunshot echoed through the dusty main street of Willow Creek, causing Olivia Burnett to freeze mid-step, her heart hammering against her ribcage as she realized the terrible truth. The man she had trusted with her life savings, the man who had promised to marry her, had just emerged from the bank with another woman on his arm and her money in his pocket. It was 1878, and in this unforgiving territory of Arizona, a woman alone had few protections and even fewer allies: Edward. She called out, her voice cracking as the midday sun beat down mercilessly on her bonnet. "What have you done?" Edward Thornton turned slowly, his face devoid of the affection he had shown her just hours earlier when he'd kissed her goodbye, promising to deposit her life savings of $800 money, earned from 3 years of teaching at the schoolhouse, into an account for their future. Instead, he smirked, his arm tightening around the waist of Francine Wheeler, the saloon owner's daughter. "Nothing that concerns you anymore, Olivia," he replied coolly. "Our arrangement has concluded." The crowd that had gathered after the celebratory gunshot fired by Edward himself to announce his engagement to Francine fell silent, watching the spectacle unfold. Olivia felt her legs weaken beneath her as the truth crashed over her like a wave. He had never intended to marry her. It had all been an elaborate scheme to gain her trust and access to her savings. "You stole my money," she said, her voice gaining strength with her rising anger. "Every cent I own." Edward laughed, the sound cutting through her like a knife. "Stole? My dear, you gave it to me freely." There were no contracts, no agreements, just the foolish trust of a naive schoolteacher. "My father is the mayor," Francine added, her ruby lips curving into a satisfied smile. "Who do you think anyone will believe? The daughter of Joseph Wheeler, or some outsider who's barely been in town 2 years?" Tears welled in Olivia's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of these people who were watching her humiliation with morbid fascination. She took a step forward, intent on confronting Edward, when the mayor himself emerged from the bank. "Is there a problem here?" Joseph Wheeler asked, his imposing frame blocking the sunlight. "This woman is causing a scene, Father," Francine said, her voice dripping with false concern. "She seems to think Edward has some obligation to her." "He took my money," Olivia insisted, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. $800, everything I have." The mayor looked from Olivia to Edward, then to his daughter. "Do you have any proof of this transaction, Miss Burnett?" Olivia's stomach sank. Of course she had no proof. She had trusted Edward, had believed his promises of love and a future together. She had given him the money with no witnesses, no receipt, nothing but his word that he would put it toward their life together. "I thought not," the mayor said when she remained silent. "Edward Thornton is about to become my son-in-law, and I won't have his reputation tarnished by baseless accusations. I suggest you remember your place in this town, Miss Burnett." The finality in his tone made it clear. There would be no justice for her here. Olivia glanced around at the faces of the townspeople, some sympathetic, others judgmental, most simply uncomfortable. These were the parents of her students, the people she had broken bread with at church socials, but none stepped forward to support her. "You won't get away with this," she said, her voice barely audible. Edward's face darkened. "I believe I already have. Now I suggest you leave before you embarrass yourself further. You're making a spectacle of yourself, and a lady should know better." The word lady fell from his lips like an insult, and something in Olivia snapped. Without thinking, she lunged forward and struck him across the face with an open palm. The crack of skin against skin seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Edward recoiled, then straightened, rubbing his jaw. His eyes hardened with fury. "You'll regret that." Before Olivia could react, he grabbed her wrist, twisting it painfully. She cried out, struggling against his grip. Then, with deliberate cruelty, he pushed her backward, sending her sprawling into the muddy street, her dress soaking up the filth from the previous night's rainfall. Laughter erupted from several onlookers, Francine's high-pitched cackle cutting through the rest. Olivia felt the mud seep through the fabric of her best dress, the one she had saved for months to purchase, the one she had worn today because she thought Edward might propose. Now it was ruined, just like her savings, her reputation, and her heart. Someone should teach her some manners, a voice called from the crowd. Never did trust outsiders, another added. Olivia struggled to her feet, mud clinging to her skirts and hands. Her dignity was in tatters, her future uncertain. The school board would likely dismiss her after this scene. Without money or employment, she would be forced to leave Willow Creek, with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. As if summoned by her desperation, the sound of hoofbeats cut through the murmurs of the crowd. A horse and rider appeared at the edge of town, dust billowing behind them. The crowd parted as the rider approached, his face shadowed by the brim of his hat. "What's happening here?" The deep voice carried authority, though the stranger wore no badge. No one answered immediately, the crowd suddenly finding the ground very interesting. Edward shifted uncomfortably, releasing Olivia's wrist and taking a step back. The rider dismounted in one fluid motion, revealing himself to be a tall man with broad shoulders and a weathered face that had seen its share of sun and hardship. He couldn't have been more than 30, but his eyes held the wisdom of someone who had lived several lifetimes. "I asked a question," he repeated, his gaze traveling from Edward to Olivia, taking in her mudded dress and tear-streaked face. "This doesn't concern you, mister," Edward said, attempting to regain his composure. "Just a domestic dispute." The stranger's eyes narrowed. "Doesn't look domestic to me. Looks like a man pushing a woman into the mud in broad daylight." "She attacked me first," Edward protested, pointing to the red mark on his cheek. "I was defending myself." The stranger looked back at Olivia, his expression softening slightly. "That true, miss?" Olivia straightened her spine, finding her voice despite the humiliation burning in her chest. "He stole $800 from me, my life savings, and he's engaged to another woman after promising to marry me." Something flickered in the stranger's eyes, recognition, perhaps, or understanding. Without a word, he removed his long duster coat and approached Olivia. With gentle hands, he wrapped the coat around her shoulders, shielding her from the curious gazes of the crowd. "Mine now," he said quietly, but loud enough for Edward and those nearby to hear. The words were not possessive but protective, a declaration that she was under his care, not to be harmed further. Olivia looked up at him, confusion mingling with gratitude. She didn't know this man, yet in this moment he was her only ally. "I'm Beau Ironside," he said, his voice for her ears alone, "and I believe in settling debts." He turned to Edward, his stance shifting subtly. Anyone familiar with the ways of the West would recognize the change. This was a man who knew how to handle himself in a fight. $800 is a serious debt," Beau said, his voice carrying across the street. "I suggest you pay the lady what you owe her." Edward laughed nervously. "This is ridiculous. You can't just ride into town and make demands. You don't even know us." "I know enough," Beau replied. "I know that a man who would steal from a woman and then humiliate her in public has no honor, and men without honor don't tend to last long in these parts." The mayor stepped forward, clearly unaccustomed to being challenged. "Now see here, stranger, we handle our own affairs in Willow Creek. You'd be wise to get back on your horse and ride on." Beau didn't move. "Is that so? Well, I happen to be acquainted with Judge Carlton in Tucson. He takes a particular interest in cases of fraud, especially when they involve respected members of the community." He paused, letting his words sink in. I wonder what he'd make of this situation. The mention of the judge, a notorious stickler for the law who had hanged more than one corrupt official, caused a visible reaction in the mayor. His face paled slightly, and he glanced at Edward. "Perhaps we should discuss this matter privately," the mayor suggested, his tone markedly different. "Perhaps we should," Beau agreed. After the lady has been compensated, Edward's expression shifted from smug confidence to uncertain fear. "I don't have the money on me." "Then I suggest you find it," Beau said, his hand resting casually near his holstered gun. Quickly. The next hour passed in a blur for Olivia. She found herself seated in the mayor's office, Beau's coat still around her shoulders, as Edward reluctantly counted out $800 from an envelope he had mysteriously remembered was in his saddlebag. The mayor, now anxious to resolve the matter without involving any judges, oversaw the transaction with forced civility. When it was done, Beau escorted Olivia from the building, his hand hovering near the small of her back but not quite touching her, respecting her space even as he continued to offer his protection. "Thank you," she said once they were alone on the boardwalk, the money safely tucked into her reticule. "I don't know how to repay you." Beau shook his head. "No need for repayment, Miss Burnett. I've seen too many good people taken advantage of by vultures like Thornton." Olivia studied him, wondering what had brought this man to Willow Creek at precisely the moment she needed him. "You're not just passing through, are you, Mr. Ironside?" A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "No, I'm not. I came looking for you, actually." Olivia took a step back, suddenly wary. "For me? Why, your brother sent me," Beau explained, his expression earnest. "Oliver Burnett. We served together in the war. He saved my life at Shiloh." Olivia's hand flew to her mouth. "Oliver, but I haven't heard from him in years." "I thought," she couldn't finish the sentence, the pain of believing her brother dead for so long overwhelming her. "He was captured," Beau said gently. "Spent 2 years in Andersonville prison. When he got out, he wasn't the same. It took him a long time to find his way back to himself. He's been looking for you ever since." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes again, but these were different tears of relief, of joy. "He's alive. Oliver is alive," Beau nodded, a genuine smile warming his features. "Very much so. He owns a ranch about 3 days' ride from here, near a town called Silver Springs. He asked me to find you, to bring you to him if you were willing." Olivia's mind raced. Her brother, her only family, was alive, and now, with Edward's betrayal, there was nothing keeping her in Willow Creek. The thought of starting fresh, of reuniting with Oliver, filled her with hope. "I'm willing," she said firmly. "More than willing. When can we leave?" "Tomorrow morning," Beau suggested. "Give you time to pack your things, say your goodbyes if there's anyone worth saying goodbye to." Olivia thought of her students, the only true attachment she had formed in this town. She would miss them, but she knew it was time to move on. "Tomorrow morning it is." As they walked toward her small house on the edge of town, Olivia became acutely aware of the stares following them. Her reputation in Willow Creek was irreparably damaged, but somehow, with Beau walking beside her and the knowledge of her brother waiting for her, it didn't matter as much as it might have. "You can keep the coat," Beau said as they reached her door. "Nights get cold on the trail." Olivia smiled, suddenly shy. "Thank you, Mr. Ironside, for everything." He tipped his hat, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Beau, please, and the pleasure was all mine, Miss Burnett." "Olivia," she corrected him. "Olivia," he repeated, her name sounding different, somehow special in his deep voice. "I'll see you at dawn." As he walked away, Olivia clutched his coat tighter around her shoulders, inhaling the scent of leather, tobacco, and something uniquely him. For the first time since Edward's betrayal, she felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with fear or anger, and everything to do with the tall stranger who had come to her rescue when she needed it most. The journey to Silver Springs was not an easy one. 3 days on horseback through rugged terrain tested Olivia's endurance, but she was determined to reach her brother. Beau proved to be a patient traveling companion, setting a pace she could manage and finding the most comfortable camping spots each night. On the first evening, as they sat by the fire, Olivia found herself sharing stories of her life since the war, her struggles to establish herself as a teacher, her loneliness in Willow Creek, and eventually, her ill-fated relationship with Edward. "I was so foolish," she said, staring into the flames. "I should have seen through him." Beau shook his head. "Trust isn't foolish, Olivia. It's one of the bravest things a person can do, especially after losing so much." "You sound like you speak from experience," she observed. A shadow crossed his face. "I've had my share of betrayals, makes it hard to let people in." "Yet you let my brother in," she pointed out. "You became his friend." Beau smiled slightly. "Your brother didn't give me much choice. He's a persistent man, Oliver is. Wouldn't leave me alone until I stopped brooding and started living again." "Sounds like him," Olivia said, feeling a surge of affection for her brother. "He was always taking in strays, healing broken things." "He told me once that it was you who taught him that," Beau said. Said his little sister had the biggest heart in Tennessee. Olivia blushed, not used to such personal conversations with a man she had known for only a day. Yet somehow it felt natural to talk with Beau. There was a quiet strength about him that invited confidence. "What about you?" she asked. "How did you end up out west?" Beau poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks flying upward. "After the war, there wasn't much left for me back east. My family's farm was gone, taken for taxes while I was fighting. I drifted for a while, took odd jobs, did some cattle driving. Then Oliver found me in a saloon in Denver, half drunk and looking for a fight. He offered me work on his ranch, said he needed a foreman who knew horses. And you've been working for him ever since." "With him, not for him," Beau corrected. "We're partners now, built the ranch up together." "It's a good place, Olivia. Peaceful. You'll like it there." The thought of a peaceful place, a home with family, brought tears to Olivia's eyes again. She had been alone for so long, fighting to survive, that the prospect of security seemed almost too good to be true. Beau noticed her tears and misinterpreted them. "I'm sorry, this must be overwhelming for you." "No, it's not that," she assured him. I've been alone for so long. The idea of seeing Oliver again, of having a home, it's more than I dared to hope for." Beau's expression softened. He reached out hesitantly and squeezed her hand. The brief contact sent a warmth through her that had nothing to do with the fire. "You won't be alone anymore," he promised. The next 2 days brought them closer, their conversations flowing more easily as they traveled through the stunning landscapes of the territory. Beau pointed out landmarks, teaching her to read the land as he did. He showed her how to spot water sources, how to identify edible plants, how to judge the weather from the clouds. Each lesson was given with patience and respect, never making her feel ignorant for not knowing. In turn, Olivia shared her knowledge of literature and history, subjects she had taught in the schoolhouse. She recited poetry as they rode, the words flowing naturally in the vast open spaces. Beau listened attentively, occasionally asking questions that revealed a sharp mind beneath his rugged exterior. By the time they crested the hill overlooking Silver Springs on the 3rd day, Olivia felt as if she had known Beau Ironside for years rather than days. The sight of the town below, nestled in a green valley with mountains rising in the distance, took her breath away. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Wait until you see the ranch," Beau said, a note of pride in his voice. "It's about 2 miles beyond the town, best grazing land in the territory." As they rode down into Silver Springs, Olivia was struck by the difference between this town and Willow Creek. Where Willow Creek had been dusty and unwelcoming, Silver Springs seemed to thrive. The main street was lined with well-maintained buildings, people nodded greetings as they passed, and there was an air of industry and purpose that had been lacking in her former home. They didn't stop in town, continuing on toward the ranch. As they rode, Beau pointed out features of interest: the church with its white steeple, the schoolhouse where children played in the yard, the general store run by a Chinese family who had come west to build the railroads and stayed to build a life. "Oliver's been trying to get a proper doctor to settle here," Beau explained. "Right now, we rely on Mrs. Chen at the store for most ailments. She knows her herbs better than any doctor I've met." Finally, they turned onto a long drive marked by a wooden arch with the words Double B Ranch burned into the crossbeam. "Double B?" Olivia asked. "Burnett and Bronson Oliver's wife," Beau explained. "You've got a sister-in-law you haven't met yet, Rebecca. They married 2 years ago." Another surprise: her brother was married. Olivia felt a momentary pang, having missed such an important event in Oliver's life, but it was quickly replaced by happiness that he had found love. The ranch house came into view as they rounded a bend in the drive, a substantial 2-story structure built of sturdy logs with a wide porch wrapped around 3 sides. Several outbuildings clustered nearby, and in the distance, she could see corrals containing horses and cattle grazing on the lush pastures. Before they even reached the yard, the front door of the house flew open, and a man emerged. Olivia's heart leaped into her throat. Even at a distance, she recognized her brother. He was broader than she remembered, his face more weathered, but the way he stood slightly favoring his right leg, a habit from childhood, was unmistakably Oliver. She urged her horse forward, barely waiting for it to stop before sliding from the saddle. Oliver rushed down the steps, his limp more pronounced than she remembered, and then she was in his arms, breathing in the familiar scent of him, feeling the solid reality of her brother after so many years of separation. "Livy," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "My God, it's really you." "Oliver," she managed through her tears, clinging to him. "I thought you were dead. All this time I thought you were dead." He pulled back to look at her, his eyes so like their father's swimming with tears. "I'm sorry, Livy. I tried to find you after the war, but by then you'd left Tennessee. It took years to track you down." A woman appeared in the doorway of the house, petite, with dark hair and kind eyes. She approached cautiously, not wanting to intrude on the reunion. Oliver noticed her and smiled, extending his hand. "Rebecca, come meet my sister. Olivia, this is my wife." Rebecca's smile was warm as she embraced Olivia. "I've heard so much about you. Oliver talks about his clever little sister constantly. I feel like I know you already." "Thank you for sending Beau to find me," Olivia said, turning to include him in the conversation. To her surprise, he was hanging back, an unreadable expression on his face as he watched the family reunion. Oliver followed her gaze. "Beau didn't tell you. It was his idea to go after you, not mine." Olivia looked at Beau questioningly. "But you said—" "I said your brother sent me," Beau corrected gently. "And he did. But it was after I saw the notice in the Tucson paper about a Miss Burnett teaching in Willow Creek. I recognized the name from Oliver's stories and showed him the paper." He would have gone himself, but he gestured to Oliver's leg. "The old war wound acts up something fierce on long rides," Oliver explained. "Beau volunteered to go in my place." This revelation shifted something in Olivia's understanding of the man who had rescued her. It hadn't been just a favor to her brother, it had been his own initiative, his own desire to reunite their family. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked Beau. He shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. "Didn't seem important. What mattered was getting you here safely." Rebecca, sensing the undercurrents, tactfully intervened. "You must be exhausted from your journey. Come inside, both of you. I've got a stew simmering and fresh bread cooling." The next few hours passed in a blur of food, conversation, and tears as Olivia and Oliver filled in the gaps of their separated lives. Rebecca proved to be a wonderful hostess and a perfect match for her brother's sensible, kind, and with a quiet strength that complemented Oliver's more outgoing nature. Beau remained somewhat on the periphery, contributing to the conversation when asked, but largely content to observe. Olivia found her gaze drawn to him repeatedly, still trying to reconcile the man she had come to know on the journey with this new information about his role in finding her. As the evening wore on, Oliver showed Olivia to a bedroom on the second floor, a lovely space with a window overlooking the mountains. "It's yours for as long as you want it," he told her. "Forever if you choose to stay. You'd want that?" She asked, suddenly unsure of her place in this life he had built without her. Oliver's expression softened. "Livy, finding you again, it's like getting back a piece of my soul I thought was lost forever. This is your home now if you want it to be." Olivia hugged him fiercely, overcome with gratitude. "I do want it. Thank you, Oliver." After he left, she stood by the window, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Movement in the yard below caught her attention. Beau was crossing to the barn, his tall figure unmistakable even in the fading light. On impulse, she grabbed his coat still in her possession after all this time and hurried downstairs. She found him in the barn, tending to the horses they had ridden from Willow Creek. "I thought you might want this back," she said, holding out the coat. Beau looked up, surprise registering on his face before he composed himself. "Keep it. Looks better on you anyway." Olivia draped the coat over a stall door, then stepped closer. "Why did you do it, Beau? Why did you come looking for me?" He focused intently on brushing his horse, avoiding her eyes. "Like I said, Oliver is my friend, and he's been searching for you for years." "That's not the whole truth, though, is it?" she pressed gently, Beau's hands stilled. After a long moment, he sighed and turned to face her. "No, it's not. The truth is, I've heard stories about you my entire friendship with Oliver, the brave little sister who kept him going through the worst of the war with her letters, the smart girl who could recite Shakespeare from memory, the kind heart who never turned away someone in need." He took a step toward her, his eyes intent on hers. I felt like I knew you before I ever met you, and when I saw that notice in the paper, it felt like fate. A chance to help Oliver, yes, but also a chance to meet the woman who had come to occupy so many of my thoughts. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. And now that you've met me, am I what you expected? A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. No, you're more. The simple honesty of his words sent a wave of warmth through her. Even after seeing me at my worst, covered in mud and humiliated in the street, Beau shook his head, reaching out to take her hand. That wasn't your worst, Olivia. That was you standing up for yourself against impossible odds. That was courage. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, the gentle touch sending shivers up her arm. When I saw you there, refusing to break even as they all turned against you, I'd never seen anything more beautiful in my life. Olivia stepped closer, drawn to him as she had been from the moment he placed his coat around her shoulders. Is that why you claimed me? When you said mine now, Beau's expression grew serious. I didn't claim you, Olivia. I would never presume. What I meant was that your protection was my responsibility from that moment. I couldn't stand by and watch you be hurt. I know, she said softly. I understood what you meant, and I'm grateful. They stood in silence for a moment, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Finally, Beau released her hand and stepped back. You should get some rest, he said, his voice rough. It's been a long journey. Olivia nodded, recognizing that he needed time, that whatever was growing between them couldn't be rushed. Good night, Beau. She was almost to the barn door when his voice stopped her. Olivia. She turned to look at him, silhouetted against the lantern light. I'm glad you're here. The simple statement carried a weight of meaning that warmed her all the way back to the house. The weeks that followed brought a new rhythm to Olivia's life. She settled into the ranch, finding her place within its daily workings. Rebecca taught her to bake bread in the large kitchen. Oliver showed her the account books for the ranch, and gradually, she began to feel useful again. When word spread that a former schoolteacher had arrived in the area, parents from Silver Springs approached her about tutoring their children. Soon, Olivia was teaching 3 days a week in a room set aside in the church, finding joy in education once more. Through it all, Beau was a constant presence, respectful, kind, but always maintaining a certain distance. They worked together often, as he taught her to ride properly and handle the gentle mare Oliver had given her as a welcome gift. Their conversations flowed easily, covering everything from books to politics to their hopes for the future. Yet there was always that invisible barrier, a hesitation on Beau's part that Olivia couldn't quite understand. He cared for her, she could see it in his eyes when he thought she wasn't looking. Feel it in the way he always seemed aware of her presence, but he never acted on those feelings. One evening, about 2 months after her arrival, Olivia found herself alone with Oliver on the porch after dinner. Rebecca had gone to visit a neighbor who was expecting a child, and Beau was checking on a mare about to foal. Can I ask you something about Beau? Olivia said, keeping her voice casual. Oliver gave her a knowing look. I was wondering when you'd bring him up. Olivia felt her cheeks warm. Is it that obvious to me? Yes, but then I know both of you pretty well. Oliver leaned back in his chair. What do you want to know? Why does he keep his distance? I thought, after what he said in the barn that first night, but he's never. She trailed off, embarrassed by her inability to articulate her confusion. Oliver was quiet for a moment, considering his words. Beau's a complicated man, Livy. He lost more than most in the war, not just his family's farm, but his faith in people. He was betrayed by someone he trusted implicitly, his fiancé. Olivia's heart sank. He was engaged to his childhood sweetheart, Caroline. While he was fighting, she married his cousin, the same cousin who arranged for their farm to be sold for taxes. When Beau came home, he found he had nowhere to go and no one to turn to. It broke something in him. That's terrible, Olivia whispered, understanding now the shadows she sometimes saw in Beau's eyes. Oliver nodded. It took years for him to trust anyone again. I think that's why he connected so strongly to your story when I shared it. He knew what it was to be alone in the world. And now, Olivia asked hesitantly, does he still love her, Caroline? No, that wound healed long ago, but the fear of being vulnerable again, of risking his heart. Oliver shrugged. That's still there. He cares for you, Livy. Anyone with eyes can see it, but he's afraid. Of what? Of not being enough. Of you realizing one day that a scarred ex-soldier with nightmares and a past full of violence isn't what you deserve. Oliver reached over to squeeze her hand. He thinks you deserve better. Olivia felt a surge of determination. That should be my decision, shouldn't it? Oliver laughed. I told him you'd say that. My stubborn little sister, always knowing her own mind. What should I do? She asked, suddenly uncertain despite her determination. Be patient with him, Oliver advised. But also be honest. Beau respects directness. If you care for him, and I think you do, don't let him push you away because he thinks it's for your own good. The opportunity to follow Oliver's advice came sooner than Olivia expected. The next evening, she found Beau alone by the creek that ran through the property, skipping stones across the water in the fading light. You're getting better at moving silently, he said without turning around. But I still heard you coming, Olivia smiled, coming to stand beside him. I wasn't trying to sneak up on you, just enjoying the evening. He glanced at her, then back at the water. It's peaceful here. I come when I need to think. And what are you thinking about tonight? She asked, selecting a flat stone from the bank and attempting to skip it. It sank immediately, and she laughed at her failure. Beau's mouth quirked up at the corner. Here, like this. He demonstrated the proper technique, his stone bouncing 4 times before disappearing beneath the surface. Olivia tried again, managing 2 skips this time. Better. Much better, he agreed, and for a moment they were just 2 people enjoying a simple pleasure together, the complications of their feelings set aside. But Olivia hadn't come just to skip stones. Gathering her courage, she turned to face him. Beau, I need to ask you something, and I'd like an honest answer. He tensed slightly but nodded. Always. Do you have feelings for me? The directness of her question clearly startled him, but Olivia pressed on. Because I have feelings for you, strong ones, and I think you feel the same way. But you keep pulling back, keeping your distance, and I need to know why. Beau stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable in the gathering dusk. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. You deserve someone whole, Olivia, someone without my baggage, my past. I don't want someone else, she said firmly. I want you, baggage and all, and I think you want me too, but you're afraid. His jaw tightened. Of course I'm afraid. Look what happened the last time you trusted a man. Edward betrayed you, humiliated you. How can you be so ready to risk your heart again? Because you're nothing like Edward, Olivia said, stepping closer. You proved that the moment you put your coat around me and stood up for a woman you'd never met. I'm not the hero you think I am, Beau warned, though he didn't step away when she moved closer. I've done things in the war, and after that would make you think differently of me. We've all done things we regret, Olivia countered, but we can't let our pasts dictate our futures. I refuse to let Edward's betrayal keep me from loving again, just as you shouldn't let Caroline's actions determine your worth. Surprise flashed across Beau's face. Oliver told you about Caroline. He told me enough to understand why you might be hesitant to trust in love again, Olivia said. But Beau, I'm not Caroline, and you're not Edward. We're just 2 people who found each other against impossible odds who connect in a way that feels right. She reached up to touch his face, her fingers gentle against his stubbled jaw. I'm not asking for promises or declarations. I'm just asking for a chance. For us to see where this might lead, without you holding back because you think you're protecting me from yourself. Beau caught her hand, pressing it more firmly against his cheek before turning to place a kiss on her palm. The gesture, so tender and unexpected, made Olivia's heart race. You make it sound so simple, he murmured. It can be, she insisted. Not easy, perhaps, but simple. Do you care for me, Beau Ironside? His eyes, dark in the fading light, locked with hers. More than I thought possible after only knowing you for such a short time. Then that's all that matters right now, Olivia said. The rest we can figure out together. For a moment, Beau remained still, searching her face as if looking for any sign of doubt. Finding none, he slowly, deliberately leaned down, giving her every chance to pull away. Olivia didn't. Instead, she rose on her tiptoes to meet him halfway, her lips finding his in a kiss that started tentatively but quickly deepened as years of loneliness, and longing gave way to the joy of connection. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Beau rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you stand up to Edward Thornton in the middle of that street. Olivia laughed softly. Even covered in mud, especially covered in mud, he said, his smile transforming his face, making him look younger, lighter. You were magnificent. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her as they stood by the creek, the first stars appearing in the darkening sky above them. For the first time since she could remember, Olivia felt truly safe, truly at home. What happens now? She asked after a while, her head resting comfortably against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Beau's answer rumbled beneath her ear. Now we take it one day at a time, get to know each other properly, build something real. Olivia smiled, content with that answer. After all, they had time to heal, time to trust, time to love. And as the night settled around them, with the sound of the creek and the distant lowing of cattle as their soundtrack, she knew that her journey had led her exactly where she was meant to be. Not to Willow Creek or Edward Thornton, not even to her brother's ranch, but to this moment, in the arms of a man who had wrapped his coat around her when she needed it most, and in doing so, had begun to mend the pieces of her broken heart.